Welcome to Conservatives Talk. My name is Justin.
And this is Jamie.
In today's show, we've got a very special guest coming on. I want to introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, Colton Moore, the Georgia senatorial candidate for District 53. And today we're going to break down, we're going to go through some of Colton's past achievements, and we're going to go into some of what he would like to achieve as he's moving through and moving forward. And we're actually going to get some of his opinions on some of the hot topic issues that are going on today. So if you don't mind, Colton, go ahead and say hey, everybody.
Yeah, hello, everyone. It's great to be on Conservative Talk with Jamie and Justin. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate what these guys are doing and getting the message out to the people of Northwest Georgia and the world.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
So stick around, and we'll be right back with the rest of our show.
I'm really excited about this one. Welcome back. And as always, remember to like and share all of our content, as well as subscribe to all of our pages on all of our platforms. And again, remember, go to conservatives with an S talk.org and click the sponsor button and sponsor at any level that you feel is necessary, or that you feel that you can.
Absolutely. So we want to also give a reminder that the Republican primary is going to be going on in 54 days, and the general election is going to be in 222 days. That's a nice little round number.
Yeah, 222. You know what I like to think about it?
What's that?
222 days until we beat Stacey Abrams again.
There we go. I like it. I like it. So, Colton, let's jump right into what we want to do. What we want to do first. We want you to be able to give an introduction to everybody that's out there and listening, paying attention. So, Colton, tell us who the man, tell us the myth, and let's hear about the legend.
I don't know about all those three things, but I'll do my best. As a man, I'm from Dade County, Georgia. Live on Lookout Mountain. I commonly joke. I grew up seeing Tennessee and Alabama from my house, just like Russia, or Sarah Palin can see Russia from her house.
Yeah.
But needless to say, not too many old conservatives still get that joke. You're showing your age a little bit now. But
I will say nowadays that might not be the best thing to be able to see Russia from your back door.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I got into politics. Studied at the University of Georgia. Studied international affairs, political science. While I was there, worked as an auctioneer at the local car auction, selling cars once a week. And the running joke now is auctioneers and politicians, they like to talk fast and take people's money. So it shares a similar job description.
Fair enough.
You had some training beforehand, didn't you?
But in politics, I've tried to be the exact opposite of that. My motto is to get government off our backs and out of our pockets. The American Conservative Union ranked me as the 7th most conservative of all the senators and the House members. The Young Americans for Liberty had me ranked as number 2 most conservative. The only person in front of me they considered was Matt Gertler. Representative Gertler and I were roommates in the legislature. When I first got elected, I knew what I stood for, but I didn't really know what the infrastructure was when it comes to true conservatism at the legislature. I read some news articles. I found this guy named Matt Gertler. After I was elected, I called him up, and we became best buds and roommates, and we wreaked havoc with a baseball bat when we were down at the legislature.
That's a good way of putting that.
Yeah.
You and Mr. No.
Yeah.
That's a great guy. I mean, Matt's actually a Kappa Sigma, which is the same fraternity I pledge. So,
okay.
All right, cool deal. Yeah.
Long time.
I got you. Awesome. So you say that you do cattle auctioneering and everything like that. I assume that you have a farm yourself.
Yep. Got 62 acres, a little herd of some mini cattle. Processed 13 different steers last year. Sell those to folks who want some fresh beef, and try to buy some short-term weigh cows here and there at the sale barn. And those are kind of the junk bonds in the cattle business. You hope that they calf out, and you hope that they both stay alive, and you can make a little profit. But I dabble in the cattle industry. last fall, I had the opportunity to come out to Montana and sell the fall run of cattle, sell heavy equipment, mostly bulldozers, excavators, and that type of thing. So that's my occupation outside of politics.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. True citizen legislator.
Yeah. And
so my family, we raised British whites. So
okay.
I've got a kind of I've got a background in that as well. As a matter of fact, as soon as we finish with the show, I've actually got a barbecue pit with the fire burning in it right now, waiting for the embers to get started back up. And I've got a bunch of beef short ribs that we're about to throw on.
Ooh. Well, I didn't get invited to that barbecue, but I need to.
Well, if you weren't up in Dade County.
Yeah, definitely next time. Definitely next time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you're going to be representing part of Floyd County here, so you're going to have to come around more often nowadays. So
no, absolutely. It's
be my representative.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good addition to the district. It's traditionally the values of Northwest Georgia have always shown to be some of the most conservative in the entire nation. So to have that northern part of Floyd to join in with Chattooga, Dade, and Walker and Catoosa it's a good addition. So I can't complain about how the district lines are drawn.
He covers just about the vast majority of the congressional district.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, we're thrilled to be in this district.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
At north part of Floyd, the Murchie area, we feel that we represent those same values, not any kind of middle ground necessarily that we see throughout the rest of the county.
Although the argument can be made some more than others. Oh, man. So, Colton, you said that you were, what was it? You were with the Young Americans for Liberty as well, or they had endorsed you. Are they going to be coming back out and helping you?
Yeah, I hope so. I haven't heard any official word of any endorsements. I think they're kind of finishing up all their final legalese of things. But no, I hope so. I'm certainly more qualified than Stephen Henry in that regard. So
that's the truth.
I hope they come through. I don't know if too many people are familiar with Young Americans for Liberty, but it's one heck of an organization, and they're pretty open about what their overall game plan is, which is a wonderful game plan, and that is to right now get 250 state legislative seats filled by liberty-minded legislators, take them and join them in what's called the Hazlitt Coalition, to where those legislators from across the country meet together, plan and strategize for legislation across the country, and then take the cream of the crop of that group and hopefully have them all run for Congress one day and have basically a liberty-minded caucus of about 20 or so Congress people, and basically block out the Republicans and Democrats from just spending all of our money and raising all of our taxes and burden us with all the regulation. So
if only.
If only.
I will say, let's keep the congressional ambitions down for a little while.
No, there's no way I would ever challenge Marjorie Taylor Greene. I tell you what, I mean, I can't wait to see her on Saturday at the Georgia Republican Assembly. She gets a bad rep in the news. They say, well, she's all the time just trying to make news. But in my opinion, the thing that she has done the most to be most successful has made absolutely no news. I've never heard any news source ever talk about it. And that's putting the brakes on all of the bad, reckless spending and regulation that's at the Capitol, right? When she walks into that chamber and she motions for those adjournments, or she says, hey, no more voice vote, we need a recorded vote. She has saved the American people billions of dollars. I'm glad she's in that seat and not me right now.
Yeah, he should come out on the campaign trail with us.
Yeah, for all of us.
Well, so let's get into kind of the meat of what we were wanting to talk about. So you had previously served as a member of the Georgia General Assembly, House District 1. Give us some of the highlights of what you had done while you were in that seat.
Yeah, so I defeated a 10-year incumbent. He had about $50,000 in his coffers. I spent $3,500 in that race. No piece of legislation out of District 1 in those 10 years had been passed except for one piece, and that was adding one member to the Department of Public Safety Board. Now, people can have a lot of debate on whether that was necessary, but that was all that District 1 ever accomplished in legislation. When I got there, I said I was going to be a more energetic voice for conservative policies. I had two big agenda items. The first was constitutional carry. Matt Gertler and I were kind of lone rangers in the wilderness with that back then. They said there's no way this is ever going to pass. It looks like the governor's going to sign that, and we're going to get that into law. The second was school discipline. I ran a very cost-effective campaign, and one of the ways of doing that was I had to be able to get my message out to a large group very quickly. The largest employer in Dade County and a lot of parts of the district is the school system, right? So you've got all those teachers. 50% of the Georgia budget goes to education, right? So in a sense, the state legislature is almost like a giant school board. So I spent many a days speaking with about 30 different teachers from the district. And I said, what in the world can we do to make education better? Right. And they said, we're having a hard time keeping a standard of discipline in our classroom. So all the soccer moms down in Atlanta got together and basically said, we want to make sure that our schools are ranked with these little report cards. They call it the CCRPI. And there were 4 metrics to that report card. One of those metrics was discipline. So we were treating discipline as if it was a bad thing. So if a teacher, didn't like what a student was doing, or if a student was acting up in class, they would send them to the principal's office. But instead of punishing the child and sending it back, the principal would just send them back, because that would, if they did discipline them, they would have to mark a negative report on that report card, which would make the school look bad. And, nobody wanted their school to look bad. So no discipline was being done. So anyway, we removed discipline reporting from that report card. That got signed into law, I think, last year. So hopefully we can bring a standard of discipline back into the classroom, because ultimately those people that are graduating, they're who our neighbors are going to be, right? That's what our society is going to be in the future. So,
yeah, absolutely. So I know you also did a couple of other things attempted to get a couple of things passed, and it's actually one of the issues that we brought up on the show, the election reform initiative, where you were trying to make ballot access for people who weren't wanting to run just on a single party ticket, anybody that wanted to be able to get out and to be able to run as an independent or a third party, making it to where it wasn't quite as complicated to get on the ballot. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most successful bipartisan initiative of Democrats and Republicans has been restricting access to the ballot.
Oh yeah.
The standards of getting on that ballot, basically you have to have about 40 to 50% of the electors to sign a petition to get your name on the ballot. So basically, if you have to go through all that anyway, you might as well get elected.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous that we can't have a third party. The Republican Party, we've seen a major split in it in the last couple election cycles. Same with the Democrats, right? Oh. In my opinion, a multi-party system would certainly yield a lot greater benefit to the people. Because what we have is these rhinos.
Cole, how would you go about like trying to? How would the bill look in your eyes? Like if you were to draft something or something to that effect, and we implemented this, how would that look?
I think there should be a very small standard for creating a party. Okay, that party should maybe have to register and go through a primary themselves. Okay, and then the general election, those parties that were registered would all be on the ballot in the general election. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So say we wanted to start a Patriot Party or a Freedom Party, right? We could set up a standard, a set of bylaws. We could register that party with the state. It should be very easy to do. We could have our own election. We could say, hey, we're going to nominate Jamie as our, candidate. Then you would go to the general election and compete against the Republicans, the Democrats, or whatever other party wanted to get in there.
But this way you would have to go through any kind of other approval process other than the state versus trying to get, this third party or independent individual on the ballot.
Yeah, the 10,000 signatures that would be required.
Correct. Would technically that's what we're trying to get away from.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The signature process in order to, institute another party.
No, just a party registration process, as opposed to having to go out and do all that groundwork and that legwork and create more viable options, give people more of a choice.
I mean, it's an interesting concept. You know, me and Justin debated this
and I won
for a long time. He feels that he won, which is reality, whatever. Because it goes back to this whole concept of, you know, though it wasn't the original intention of the founding fathers, it was out of their works that created the two-party system. And how do we migrate from the two-party system if it is even possible in today's age? Because the reality is the RNC and the DNC have a full lock, stop, barrel, and control on the funding and the funding sources. So how would you essentially work towards, you know, I mean,
electing more legislators like Colton?
Well,
that's how you do
it. That's part of the process, right? Part of the process is actually getting it through to allow for third parties to be up on the ballot.
Well, with enough legislators, they can pass that law.
From there, it's how do you work on shifting the funding? But we can talk about that later.
You can tell it's a very
there's obviously a lot of nuances.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to it. You know what I'm trying to say. You know, I don't think it's going to be successful anytime soon. But I think it's an important question to ask any candidate running for office right now.
I agree.
What their opinion is on it, and you know, what their strategy is to seeing it through. So,
because it's not like we don't already have factions and coalitions inside of, you know, I mean, the two brands anyway.
Right. Exactly.
It's essentially more elevating the coalitions than it is, you know, I mean, elevating the party as a whole.
Well, that and Georgia needs to get rid of that 50+1.
I don't know about that, but I mean, it's worth debating.
Well, if you get rid of that 50+1 percentage, or the 50% plus one voter to get over the primary threshold, it opens it up to a lot more opportunities there.
It does, and I will agree with that statement. It does. It you know, when you have to solidify a majority, not necessarily doesn't mean that the majority wants whatever or what's best for the state, the country, whatever it is what the majority wants.
You know, I think one of the detrimental parts of the society we live in now when it comes to politics is obviously these parties have created brands for themselves, right? The Republican Party, right, it's got its set of principles to the general public. They read those sets of principles and they look at the candidates and they say, well, they have an R beside their name. They subscribe to those principles, right? The problem is the Republican Party has been infiltrated by people who don't have those principles, right? And they are taking advantage of an ill-informed electorate that they follow those principles. So ultimately, people are making decisions and voting for people that do not follow those Republican principles. So if we were holding our Republicans accountable, then that'd be one thing, but that's not happening. So
yeah,
which is interesting. It's almost like the incumbent rule, right? Like if you see an R, you see an I. Most people, it's either they would go back to name recognition or the fact that, you know, has my lifestyle changed? I'm going to vote for the incumbent, not knowing anything. You know, the ignorant to the voter. But I mean, I see it. I mean, I can kind of see that, and I will agree that there is some shaking up inside of the system that needs to be done because clearly we're starting to see that the overall arching model is not working.
Just admit it, Jamie, I won.
No. Never.
So I know another one of your big passions and your legislative agendas was judicial reform. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more as well?
Yeah, there's a couple things when it comes to judicial reform. An interesting fact about Georgia. Georgia is the only state in the union that in our Constitution, it says that juries are the judge of both the law and the facts, right? So what that means is, and Georgia's like this, you know, we're an empire state. We have, if you look at the legislature in Georgia, literally we resemble the U.S. Congress more than any other state, right? We have communists in our Georgia legislature. We have extreme libertarian, freedom-loving people in our legislature, right? So we've got both ends of the spectrum. Now that they're all representing different factions and different groups in our state. But when we say the jury is the judge of both the law and the facts, what that means to say is, say Stacey Abrams comes up and signs some crazy law into effect, right? And the people of Dade County say, whoa, 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 this is terrible, terrible governance. And they've got someone on the stand charged with a crime. That jury, being the judge of the law, can say that law really doesn't matter in our courtroom, right? And they can acquit someone. It's called jury nullification.
Exactly.
And I'm a big proponent of it. I think especially in the demographics of our state, right? I mean, the people of Metro Atlanta and say Savannah, Georgia, don't necessarily line up with the values that we have here. So I think that's one piece of legislation I had written up was that judges in the state of Georgia would be required to inform the jury of the Georgia Constitution that said that they were the judge of both the law and the facts.
I like that. I've never even considered that. I like that.
Because it's not directive, which is what a lot of people worry when you start informing the jury, but it also gives the jury a more basis of guidance whenever they make a decision. Because, let's just be honest, juries come in and when they're picked, they're based upon opinion and every prerequisite that you can think of why they're making the decision that they make. But if it's reinstilled from the judge that, remember, these are some of the baseline guidelines that you all need to be thinking about, criteria in a sense, that can really kind of, help change and shape decisions that are made.
Well, technically, the judges are required to tell the jury exactly how they're supposed to go about deciding and coming up with a verdict already. But I like the idea of more or less forcing judges to say, and by the way, if you don't agree with this law and that it happened, you can basically nullify this entire thing altogether.
Correct. Which is yeah.
No, I really like that. So Colton, you've given us a little bit about the past. Now let's hear about the future. What exactly are you wanting to do if you are able to get elected again?
Yeah, I think right now my main target, if I want to shoot something down when I get down there, is going to be the Georgia film tax credits. So in 2018, right before COVID, there was one professor in the university system of Georgia who had the bravery to come out and basically write a policy brief describing what the Georgia film tax credits were doing. Okay. He was out of Kennesaw. His name's J.C. Bradbury. And anyway, you can look it up online. Just a quick Google search. You can find the whole document. I think there's even a link to it on my Facebook page. But what he discovered was that Georgia subsidizes the film industry 4 times greater than that of New York and California. Now, it is against the Constitution of Georgia to subsidize any industry or business, right? We can't use tax dollars and subsidize an industry, right? It's not the proper role of government, right? The proper role of government is, for things like infrastructure, education, public policy, or public safety. I'm sorry, but the how this works is, say, Jamie, you want to be a filmmaker, okay, and you go out and you spend $100,000 to produce your film, okay. Now, unfortunately, your film was a total bust, okay. You made absolutely no money on your film, so you don't owe any taxes. But what you did get was you got a 30% tax credit, okay. Now, it started out as a 20% tax credit, but because you put the little peach logo in your credits at the end, you got an additional 10%. So now you're at a 30% tax credit. Okay. So that's $30,000 that you have in a tax credit, but you don't owe any taxes. So what do you do with this $30,000 tax credit? Well, it's transferable. Okay. So now you can go sell it to whoever you want to go sell it to. So anyway, Justin over here, he's big business mogul. And he owes a lot of Georgia taxes. And he says, I'm going to save some money on my taxes and I'm going to go buy your tax credit. Okay. So the going rate on that tax credit right now is 90 cents on the dollar. Okay. So he owes $10,000 in Georgia taxes. He pays you $9,000, Jamie. You take that $9,000, you put it into your pocket. Meanwhile, the Georgia Department of Revenue gets a little slip of paper that says tax credit by the Georgia Department of Economic Development. Okay, this has cost Georgia billions of dollars, roughly 4% of our budget. It also equates to anywhere from $220 to $250 per Georgia household in additional taxes a year to fund the film industry.
Wow.
Okay. And meanwhile, the film industry comes into Georgia and they don't care one thing about our conservative values.
Correct.
And we're sitting here paying them to tell us that. So
that's very interesting.
yeah.
I did not realize that that's how the tax credit program was running, or that they were transferable, because that's major. And the more
and they're transferable for like 10 years. So the other problem our budget department has is they don't like they can see all the tax credits that's been coming in, but all of a sudden, if all the film industry just wanted to cash in their tax credits at one time, boom, we've got a shortfall in the budget.
Yep, and we owe them money.
Well, yeah, we just never receive it, and it all gets exported out to Hollywood. It's an indirect subsidy, completely unconstitutional. But guess what? Republicans, back to the third party, Republicans are responsible for it.
Yeah, it's
gloom, despair, and agony.
Oh yeah. Well, there's also another little issue that's plaguing Northwest Georgia specifically. I don't know if you know much about that involving tax credits, but have you heard the term syndicated conservation easements?
Yeah. So that's a federal deal, though, right?
Well, it can also be done along the state lines, but yeah, that's a big issue that is really plaguing Northwest Georgia specifically. I mean, we have become the
hub.
Yeah, the hub of it. I believe that's what Forbes magazine called it. It's specifically Rome, Georgia, being the hub of it. But hopefully, Congress is getting ready to do something to where they'll be able to come back and arrest all of these guys. And I look forward to that happening.
And revert the easements. I think that's the biggest part. Like, Northwest Georgia's been hurting for a while because a lot of property has been tied up to where you can't bring in industry, or you can't expand existing businesses, because it would cost double the amount to do construction or anything else. I mean, it's almost arbitrated real estate prices at this point, because of the fact that the land value is inflated for, conservation.
Absolutely. All right. So you've given us the number one goal. What's number 2 and 3?
So 2 and 3 is to continue to protect gun rights in Georgia. Right. Hopefully constitutional carry gets signed into law. But we've also got the red flag laws looming. And Matt Gertler and I also put up legislation banning red flag gun laws. It wasn't very successful, but hopefully we can continue to push that. But when it comes to the Georgia budget, I want to see the budget broken into departmental budgets, right? We have this big omnibus budget. So, even though there's subsidies in that budget, but there's also police funding and firefighter funding in that budget. So when you go and you vote against it, well, then all the Republicans come at you and say, well, you don't support police officers, or you don't support firefighters, right? No, actually, I don't support subsidies, but it's all in this giant omnibus budget. So I think each department ought to submit their proposed budget, and that should be debated on individually, right? So there should be, 15, 20 different budgets and not one big omnibus budget.
That's a good point. I mean, we look and see what's going on with Congress right now. I mean, they just reinstated the earmark provision to where now you're able to earmark certain pieces of funding that's going into this, into the omnibus spending package that they just passed. And it was it was jaw-dropping to see that Republicans were the biggest offenders in doing that.
Yeah, it went from being removed completely to slowly creeping back in since 2016, and now it's basically paid to play.
Exactly.
As I described it to Justin, it's like watching House of Cards again, because once again you're starting to see Republicans, Democrats trade favors to make sure that certain things are done inside of their local district. But what does that cost the overall taxpayer inside the country on their federal?
Yes, very true. Very true. All right, so now we'll get into probably what I would assume would be your one of your more favorite topics, and something that really gets me fired up a little bit, as you have a very unique history of standing up against the Republican leadership and not being pushed around and bossed and told what to do. And when they do attempt to try that, you actually get together with other members of like-minded individuals and go against them and try and take leadership out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too many politicians want a career in politics.
Yes.
I never want a career in politics. I mean, I've got an awesome career outside of that. And when politicians want a career in politics, they'll do anything to protect their job security. For me, I was elected by the people to represent their interests, and that's what I'm going there to do. If the people don't like the way I'm representing their interests, then they have the ability to fire me, right? But I'm not there to promote my own political ambitions. One of the first instances of this was when I was sitting there at the desk, and I had no idea this piece of legislation was coming. It was probably like a week in. And it was to name the $20 million Justice Center, the Nathan Deal Judicial Center. Okay. Nathan Deal had just finished his term as governor, and we were about to name the most expensive building in Georgia's history, the Nathan Deal Judicial Center. Meanwhile, some of the first cases in that building were going to be by Pruitt Health, which had just hired Nathan Deal as their lobbyist, right? And the top of this resolution, that was David Ralston's resolution, said Nathan Deal, being the symbol of justice in Georgia, should take the name of this.
Oh, wow.
And I remember Matt Gertler walked over to me and he said, how are you going to vote on this? And I said, well, just based off what I'm reading, this is an easy no. He's like, really? You're going to vote no on this? And I said, yeah, I mean, it looks like an easy no. And I didn't really think anything of it. Anyway, I pressed the no button, but we can see everyone's votes, right? Mm-hmm. There's only 2 no votes on that board. It's mine and Matt Gertler's. And there was a Democrat, okay, who is a very left wing Democrat. He comes over to me and he goes, Colton, he goes, you got to have a set of gonads to put the no button down on this. He goes, are you absolutely crazy? And I was like, well, he's obviously not the symbol of justice. Why would we vote to name the building after him?
Yeah.
And I had another Republican come over, and he's like, this is not the hill you want to die on. And I looked at him and I said, if I was worried about dying, I wouldn't be here, which was a kind of a take back to him. But I'm there to fight for my constituents, right? I thought, I told the reporters after that, I said, well, let's just go ahead and name the Capitol, the Gold Dome, the Kemp Capitol. Because I can think of so many other Georgians who should be considered the symbol of justice for Georgia than Nathan Deal, who just became governor. We haven't even been able to see what his policies are going to look like. Well, one of those policies was the film tax credits, right? I mean, I would have been a yes for a Martin Luther King Judicial Center, right? Like, he's the symbol of justice for Georgia. But Nathan Deal, absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, that was the first instance. The second instance of this was when David Ralston, okay, you see the videos in North Korea when everybody comes in and they start clapping for the dictator, but like they're not happy about clapping. That's what I felt like when I was in the legislature and David Ralston would walk in and all the legislators would stand up and they would start clapping. Meanwhile, they're looking at each other and they're cussing him, like, screw David Ralston. He messed up my piece of legislation, or he's doing this bad, right? But it was just a dictator mentality. So anyway, that's the prelogue to this story. The news report came out and said that David Ralston had basically delayed roughly 1,000 cases for justice. He's the only person in the state of Georgia who was able to do this, because as the Speaker of the House, he could say, I have legislative duties every single day, and he can go to the court and he can say, sorry, can't go to trial today because I've got some legislative duties. He's the only person in the state can do it, right? So none of this got brought to anyone's attention until there was a 14-year-old rape victim who at 19 years old had become terminally ill, and there was no justice had been done yet, right? Because the accused hired David Ralston as their attorney. Okay, so this went on for about 2 days in the news, and the legislature wasn't moving. No one in the House was like, that's in the news, but we need to forget about that. I got bills to get passed. I can't do anything about this. And I was like, this is ridiculous. We've got to do something about this. So needless to say, some folks called it a coup, but there was about 15 people originally who signed a resolution and asked the Speaker to resign and take care of those legal duties that he had and no longer serve as Speaker. When this resolution was getting passed around the floor, the Speaker steps down, session stops. Caucuses started to form. multiple caucuses in the Democratic Party, multiple caucuses in the Republican Party of what to do. I saw Leader Trammell, Bob Trammell of the Democrats, and I said, what are you going to do? And he grabs the table and he shakes it and he says, well, this place is shaking and I'm just going to hold on. But needless to say, there were only, I think, 9 or 10 that ended up signing that. And ultimately, people would say, well, all of your influence for the people of District 1, that's over. But what I think a lot of people didn't pay attention to was, at the same token, the heartbeat bill wasn't getting a hearing in the committee. And David Ralston had assigned that piece of legislation to a committee that he knew the chairperson of that didn't believe in the legislation and wasn't going to see it through. David Ralston realized that the coup was forming. All the pressure was on him. There was a new state representative from South Georgia who got up in a caucus meeting and said, look, like I've been playing by the Republican caucus game here, but I would like to see this legislation heard. And I think that was the bean that tipped it all over. Meanwhile, it finally got a hearing and ultimately saved about 90,000 lives in Georgia, 90,000 abortions in Georgia. So hopefully, this heartbeat bill, now that it's become law, stands true and can beat all the court cases and Supreme Court issues that it's having. But anyway, that's the backstory on that.
You were a co-sponsor of the heartbeat bill as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yep. It only passed by one vote.
That blows my mind.
We had some Republicans who they weren't even showing up to the committee hearing room to even vote out of the committee. One good thing I can say about Governor Brian Kemp is that when they weren't showing up to that committee room, he was calling them, he was texting those members, and he was saying, at least go have the courage to go vote one way or the other. Mm-hmm. They went in there. Obviously, they voted for it. But the problem we were finding in the House is so many of them in those inner city and even like Athens, Georgia. I had to get chest to chest with some of them and say, look, you say you're a Republican, you say you're pro-life. Now's your time, to go vote the right way. And ultimately it did. It passed by one vote. But I get passionate about that. So.
Just a little.
Yeah.
I could tell a little bit.
Yeah.
So sticking with the topic of sticking it to leadership and such, let's I know you have a very unique role that happened in 2020, particularly with the fraud that we saw. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So, obviously, it became very evident that there were. So let me give you a little more backstory on this. I voted for I think, was it $180 million or $200 million voting machines, the Dominion voting machines. Okay. I was sold on that as the fact that you were going to be voting digitally. It was going to print it off on a piece of paper. You had a paper physical copy of it, and you were going to be inserting it to a machine, and there was no chance for fraud. Okay. And I was thinking, if any tax dollars could be spent on anything, voter security and election integrity should be a very responsible thing for tax dollars to go to. Okay. So that was in the back of my head. Then we get COVID. Then we get the mail-in ballots. Then everything goes crazy. Okay. We've got so many discrepancies in the state. I was sitting in the legislature at the time, and I was the very first state legislator in Georgia to call Governor Kemp, David Ralston, and Jeff Duncan and said, hey, we've got to have a special session to sort this out. It's our constitutional duty. People kind of forget that the states are ultimately the ones who have to decide what those electors are. And if there's any discrepancies, it's supposed to be sorted out in the legislature. Not to mention, Brad Raffensperger had broken the law that the legislature that he was once a member of had established. So, I was there in the forefront. Those were some very difficult decisions for a lot of politicians to make at that time. It wasn't for me, but they were just like, we don't know what to do here. Should we? I love Donald Trump, but maybe Joe Biden did win. Well, once you saw the fraud, maybe the legislature did decide to send those electors to Joe Biden, but at least the legislature should have had the opportunity to review the evidence, call a special session, and make a vote for those electors.
I'm a firm believer that it was absentee ballot stuffing more than the machines, but the other night, Burt Jones said something that really rang bells with me, and it was along the lines of, regardless of whether you believe it was the absentee ballots or the machines have caused such a chaos that it's time for the legislator to look at changing how we do our voting. Because,
well, I think personally, there's a breach of contract with those machines because, we were assured that, there would be the machine would take it digitally and it would print it off on a piece of paper and you would scan it. I can't tell you the countless reports now in the last election of people who were printing off blank sheets of paper with a barcode and trying to scan it in. Right. Those voters didn't get to see the candidates they voted for, which to me is a breach of contract. They ought to give us our money back and take their machines, and we ought to start with a new system. But
that's one of the many breaches that we've run across with that. And unfortunately, here in Floyd County, we actually had to come back in and rehire Dominion to come back and do our technical support for the upcoming primary election.
And again, it's because we got a new board.
Well,
there are time constraints on things, but
no, they had other options. But anyway, that's beside the point. But
I'm not going to look. I'm going to defend.
I know that. I know.
We did good to get rid of the old election board. I think the election board we have in place now is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't agree that we could have explored it, but when we're looking at the time constraints of training a new board, and it'll be okay.
I got you. So if you're not aware, Floyd County actually had a 3-person election board up until this past December, and Floyd County is controlled 100% at every level by Republican elected officials. However, every member that they had appointed to that election board were all Democrats.
It was heavily influenced by the Democratic Party to the point to where a nonpartisan, nonpartisan elected official who's a very well-known member of the Democratic Party was seen as being very influential as to the chair of the election board. And we had a lot of issues. Almost every issue that's in SB 202 that occurred here in Floyd County.
Yeah.
Every single one, from them passing out waters to having little cards to Democratic hotlines, all that happened.
Losing 3,000 ballots.
3,000 ballots.
Wow.
Everything you can possibly think of that the whole country saw, like 1 or 2 situations, every single bit of it happened here. And so I think it's a cap in our hat that we were able to remove that old election board thanks to our delegation and bring in a new election board. And you know what? It's no longer covert. There's 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 person appointed by our Republican majority county commission. So
that's awesome, right? I mean, obviously there's a problem, and you guys got it changed. Nothing makes me more upset as when Republicans see these types of problems and they sit on their hands and they don't do anything about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm all for it, especially if it's a Republican, whether they fall on the line or not. I'm all for, if you believe in conservative values and you're willing to stand up and put your face out there, I'm all for fighting for you until you show that you're not going to stand up and fight for. And then we need to find somebody else.
And all the good Lord's people said, amen.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I would like to get your opinion on some, specifically 2 very hot topic issues that have come up in the legislature this session. One of them being, of course, the 2022 Georgia gambling initiative and trying to get the constitutional amendment passed to allow for sports betting to go on and the horse tracks and everything to be built here. Specifically, the piece of legislation that came out of the Senate that was sponsored by Mullis, the guy who's thankfully retiring and stepping aside. He did it way too late in life. He should have done it 20 years ago, in my opinion. But there has been a renewed push in that. It died in the Senate, but now it's being brought back up in the House. It was approved by one of the House committees, so it's had a breath of life breathed back into it. And the second one being the Farming Act. Basically, it's a piece of legislation that you had previously gotten behind and really supported that basically stopped all of the nuisance lawsuits that would come out from
right.
that it would be proposed against farmers.
Yeah, the right to farm.
Exactly.
What you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that one's made a big resurgence this year as well. So I'm interested in seeing if that one's going to push through. I would like to get your opinion on both that one and the gambling.
Okay. Sure.
What you're saying about it.
Yeah. So when it comes to the gambling issue, I know the people of Dade County, a lot of the folks I talked to in Walker County, they look at gambling very negatively. I was very surprised. Well, not really surprised. I don't guess when Jeff Mullis, decided to get behind that. That was, to me, was just a result of his transactional politics.
Yeah.
But to me, gambling, and I've gambled many times in my life, but I've always done it outside of the state of Georgia, either in Vegas or, out west in Montana somewhere. For me, that shouldn't be, brings in a lot of negative things into our district that I don't think my constituents that I representative would ever want to see. When it comes to sports betting, sports betting is about the only thing I've ever heard constituents say, yeah, we'd like to see some sports betting, right? I mean, Tennessee's got it just across the border. I think a lot of them just go to VPN.com and get themselves a VPN and change their location and go and sports gamble anyway.
Pretty much.
And the government doesn't have the bandwidth to try to enforce anything against it anyway. So I feel like that's kind of already happening. I don't think there'll be much push against online sports betting. But when it comes to the horse racing, when it comes to a general casino, no, I would not be in support of that coming from District 53.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that's generally the consensus that we're hearing throughout around all of North Georgia.
Yeah, not just North Georgia either. It's what I'm hearing a lot of, it's out the 14th, 11th, the 9th, most of Georgia really is that, to a certain degree, there's some kind of want for, like you said, sports betting, but, that they want to kind of do that near the Atlanta Motor Speedway and kind of have it in one large complex. But outside of that, everybody's like, no, we don't want a casino in this area for what it can, the riffraff that it can bring.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. A good comparison of this is you look at who the biggest lobbyists are in Alabama and in Georgia. And Georgia's the Georgia Chamber. Now, as many things as I don't like about the Georgia Chamber, I would rather have them than I'd rather have the mafia folks who are trying to get the horse racing and all the gambling, that they're lobbying for over there. So, the right to farm bill is obviously close to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite moments in politics is we had a commissioner in Dade County, Philip Hartline. He was running for office. The guy's got an agricultural background, also builds houses. But anyway, he spread some chicken litter out on his field, and his neighbors who had just moved in from I think it was Cobb County, and they were trying to get the country lifestyle. There was this one dry spell that he got it spread. It just happened to be close to 4th of July, and they wanted to have a barbecue. And anyway, he goes over and he tells them, he said, I'm paying $2,000 a year or something like that in property taxes. He said, I've got to pay those property taxes. He said, if you'd like to pay those property taxes, I don't have a problem not spreading my chicken litter out today, but I've got this little window of time to spread it out. So anyway, you pay your property taxes. You've paid for your property. It's your right to use that property. The problem we're seeing is a lot of these big law firms coming out of California, some of these bigger animal rights groups, and they're targeting some of our bigger forms of agriculture. And basically they're malicious lawsuits to try to get them shut down, to try to take a big part of their business. And it has no merit. We have to, agriculture is the number one industry in Georgia. And if the government is going to protect any business, we need to be protecting that, right? I mean, Joe Biden has already promised us food shortages. For goodness sake, we've got to protect our agriculture industry. So big supporter of that.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah,
because that's
going to be a major issue
Mm-hmm.
in the northern part of the district, of the district that we live in, especially in District 52. I mean 53.
50.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. So I got one more question for you as far as the agriculture aspect goes. Can you tell us why it costs $20 to buy a ribeye steak now?
Yeah. So
Yes.
we've got there's basically 4 meat processors.
Mhm.
Okay. These are multinational corporations. They're not just based here in the United States. I mean, some of them, I guess, have their headquarters here, but they're global. And basically it's an antitrust issue for me. But this all kind of came about through what was it? Sinclair, who wrote the book about the meat processing industry in Chicago. The name of the book's losing me right now. But anyway, the industry, if you want to process beef locally in the United States, basically you have to pay $60,000-$70,000 a year for a salary for a USDA inspector to come in and inspect that beef. What I would like to do is follow the Wyoming model. And I think Thomas Massey has a piece in Congress called the Prime Act.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, I think Georgia should be able to govern itself when it comes to processing meat. Okay, I would love to see District 53's meat raised, processed, and sold within the district, right? So how the American cattle industry works now, and you can really see this in the last 20 years when it comes to beef, just at the Calhoun stockyard, right? So the Calhoun stockyard used to put up some really big numbers every week. Those have kind of dwindled down, and now you see a lot more goats and other smaller livestock. But we've got these smaller breeders, 30 head of cattle up to say 200 head of cattle in our area. They take they breed the livestock. That livestock then gets shipped out to those big factory farms in the Midwest. Then they're getting processed and sent back to us, right? The beef isn't necessarily that healthy either, right? If you go to Walmart and you buy some ground beef, you're looking at genetics from say 600 different animals, 600 different DNAs, not animals, but just cattle in itself, that it's in that 1 pound of ground hamburger beef. Right. Whereas if we were focused more on our local beef, we could have ground hamburger that came from one animal.
Yep.
Those processors are also making all the money. Right. So a farmer today is, and especially in Northwest Georgia, is really doing it as a hobby, or a way to pay their property taxes. There's not a way to make a living at it. But I think a really good model in the world when it comes to this is Japan. So Japan, Wagyu beef, we've all heard of that. They're a very populated country. There's not very much room for cattle. It's starting to look a lot more like North Georgia looks like now, right? When we have all these different new developments and the agricultural land is getting a lot smaller. Yep. But a lot of times you'll have the producer also processing and also selling the beef at a restaurant right there in front of the place that they're growing the beef, right? And the government's out of the way of that process.
Very Ted Nugent. I love it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well,
I don't know.
With Ted Nugent, you can go hunt the deer that you want to be cooked right there at your table.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
That's a really big question, especially here in Floyd County. I mean, Justin knows this, but I started riding horses when I was 5, and I spent most of my summers till I was about 10 on a farm, either here or in Indiana, where we used to go out to visit friends. And I've talked to a few people out here, especially in Cave Spring, about their cattle farm and their biggest issue right now, and they're worried about how they're going to process the meat. They're trying to do it on their own. They're trying to find a way to where they can sustain their own farms for really the same reason that we're just talking about, processing.
Right. So I would love to make it to where in the state of Georgia, to set its own standard for processing and selling that beef locally and get the USDA out of it, to where we could govern ourselves.
That'd be awesome.
You know, I mean, it makes sense, right? If you go to the store and you buy some beef and you hear that your neighbor actually bought some beef and got sick from it, well, you know, hey, I don't want to buy any beef from that processor, right? We're smart enough to realize when to buy good beef and when not to. And a processor is obviously, you know, has a reputation to maintain of their own processor. They don't want to produce a bad product. I think it can be governed itself. I think probably one of the problems that I run into the most are my own allies in the Cattlemen's Association, who have so long said, you know, if one person gets sick from beef, then it's going to affect our entire industry. Yeah. I think they could have made that argument 20 years ago, but in the situation that we're in now, the only way I see for a prosperous cattle or even agriculture industry in Northwest Georgia is to get the big federal government out of the way and let consumers buy locally.
Hey, I agree with that.
I love it.
You know, and kind of tie in the whole conversation. I mean, if there's a way to kind of, I guess you could say, offset some of the film tax credits and film industry with, you know, new innovations in agriculture and cattle, then I think we could really start to see a change and, you know, a lot of the way that we're doing things here in Georgia and get back to the farm.
Absolutely.
You know, there's a lot of new processing plants popping up around District 53. Yeah. You know, there's already some in existence. There's some new ones being made. I mean, even you go a little further down into Calhoun, I think there's 2 more processing plants there being built or just have been built. So, you know, that's coming. I just want to get out of their way and let them go to work.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. All right, Colton. Well, we're right at that time limit now.
Okay.
I wanted to say sincerely thank you for coming on and speaking with us about this. As I said earlier, you are the first that we've had on here, so we start with the best. So,
well, gentlemen, I just want to say thank you to both of you guys. I mean, you get the type of government you deserve, and if you don't get involved in it, you don't deserve very much. Mm-hmm. So for guys like us who are out there in the fray of politics, there needs to be, you know, 10 times more of us out there. But I just want to say thank you to you guys for putting up a good fight. And getting the word out, getting the messaging out, and conservative talk. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, buddy. Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot. Mm-hmm. Like I knew not a lot about you, Colton. And Justin was telling me that you're a great guy, and I can honestly see it now. And you know, I look forward to learning more about you, and look forward to seeing your campaign thrive.
All right, I appreciate it, guys. And if anybody wants to find out more information, then go to my website, coltonmoore.com. And if you want to help us get the message out, you can go to coltonmoore.com/donate. And we're also accepting cryptocurrency as of yesterday.
There we go.
So that's something we didn't talk about. Another talk for another day. But
absolutely. I would love to have that conversation with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome, man.
So, as always, just a reminder, please like and share all of our content and subscribe to all of our social media pages. And if you would like, and if you're able to, and helping us to be able to produce more content like this, you go to conservativestalk.org and hit the sponsor tab. It's pretty self-explanatory on how to set it up and go through it. And as another reminder, again, Republican primary is coming up in 54 days. So remember, we have to get out. We have to vote. If you don't vote, it's your fault. If you and
222 days until we beat Stacey Abrams again.
Exactly. So as always, thank you for coming on, Colton, for coming on Conservatives Talk, and thank y'all for listening and putting up with us for all this while. So
all right, hope to see you all soon. See you at the polls.
We'll see you. All right,
have a good one.
Thanks.